Hello folks, Graham Vincent, violin maker and musician. So it's Q&A time. I'm just gonna have a bit of a general chit chat as well, but should we start with having a look at what questions have come in and have a quick chat through those, and then I'll just let you know everything else that's been going on and what I'm up to. So, first one, that's not really a question, that's just a statement. Okay. It's very green 532 on the subject of it being like a speaker. Yeah, we were talking about my beliefs in how a violin makes it sound and resonance and all the rest of it. And I was saying about, the flexibility of the front being the most important thing to me, because I kind of think of the front more like a speaker than part of a sort of the whole violin being one just resonant chamber. And that, I don't want to recap the whole thing completely, but that was because I was saying, the thing about a violin is it's not like a guitar. It's not a plucked thing. I mean, you put force into it continually. So although it should ring on, and a good violin is a sort of a nice ringy violin, but it's a continually driven system. So yeah, that was my comment, because I'm kind of, for me, this is the most important part of it here, and this all needs to be fairly thin, allowing a lot of movement there, a lot of flexibility in the front. So that's interesting that basically someone who's worked in the industry, speakers, I guess, it's kind of sees something in what I was saying. That's interesting. Yeah. What I've tried to do on my instrument is keep a little more material in the center of the plate and give it stiffness. I think a lot of that is also achieved, of course, by the arching. And what I was saying is, I like there to be a fairly large flat area around the center. So if you sight down this, I mean, I make sure that the arching doesn't sort of come right to the edge, so that, I mean, obviously a flat material is more able to move than a domed arched section. That's how I do it. But and then making the area around the edge somewhat thinner. Yeah, same to act similarly to the edge suspension of a speaker cone. Yeah. What you want on a speaker is a stiff cone and with soft edge suspension. Yeah, and that's very generally what I've tried to do. It sounds like it's very green 532 and I are very much singing from the same hymn sheet. Right, next question or statement, really. Okay, Gervais Gallant. Great info on your arching heights. Yeah, I mean, I was talking about the overall thickness of the front, measured from, the underside of the front to the top of the arch, basically. And from memory, I think he was saying about, or the question last week was someone saying they were working in the sort of 14 to 15 mil range, and asking what the one that I previously mentioned, which was very low, was, and that was 8 mil, which is really, really, really low. But generally I work at about the sort of 12 mil mark, which is, fairly low. I've noticed in several other videos that your arching heights seem a little bit lower. Yeah. I wondered what adjustments you make to get this working. What adjustments I make? Well, because I always do it at that height. I mean, I don't make adjustments as such. Oh, sorry, you're talking about bridge height and so on. Yes, of course I do. Right, okay, we'll deal with that. I was just going to say, in terms of sound adjustment, it's the way I do them, so I don't, there's no special adjustment from any one to the next. But no, that's not your question. Sorry, I should have read the whole thing before jumping in. I wonder what adjustments you make to get this working. Bridge height and neck angle a bit higher for the E. Bridge height is a particular concern of mine, since in my last effort I inadvertently ended up with a 34 mil height of the bridge. This worried me, but it's my best sounding fiddle. Yeah, I generally aim for 33 in the center of the bridge. I think that's about standard, really. And so that effectively means that if the front is shallower, then the neck angle will be shallower. And I set the neck up, you know, once I've closed the body, you know, the front is on, that's when I cut the actual neck joint, and that gives me the opportunity to actually set it so that the bridge is at the right height. So, you know, rather than following any prescribed neck angle, I adjust the height of the angle of the angle, pardon me, of the neck so that the bridge is right. And it's about the normal angle, but you know, that's how I do it anyway. And I would, if it was 34mm, I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't necessarily say that 1 or 2 millimeters here and there makes a huge difference in that respect. I know that's gonna really set the cat amongst the pigeons with some fiddle makers, some violin makers. But I like a bit of variation in violins. I think if they were all exactly the same, we'd be in trouble. Okay, question from BMK4469. Yeah, this is quite a funny one. Graham, just bought an old dysfunctional violin, no blocks, falling apart, basically just to see the insides and mechanics of the instrument. I love that. You just get on, do it. Then decided to veneer the inside to support the frame. Then decided to use cork from wine bottles to cut shape for blocks. Okay, so this thing is falling apart, and this gent or lady has decided to actually use veneer to give some integrity to the inside, and they're using cork blocks to glue those on. Looking good. This all done for curiosity. Also use veneer to fix cracked top. Yes, that's an approach. I mean, if you're not careful, you're going to end up with a plywood violin. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, but not looking out of place. Have a few internal ideas with these same veneers for sound. As a painter, this creative non-conventional approach with inspiration from your non-conformist ideas, we will see where it ends. One thing's for sure, the internal aesthetics will look wonderful, but what will it sound like? Like a Ferrari with no engine? Good health. Yeah, I mean, experimentation. It sounds like you're basically, all you're putting at risk there is, well, the risk of getting a few laughs from people who don't really know anything else, so I wouldn't worry about them, and the risk that you might, you know, worsen the condition of one cheap violin, so don't worry about it. Just get in there, explore it, and you'll know so much more about it all by the time you've finished. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you consider overall weight, you know, the more weight you add, the worse things are generally. Having said that, if a lightweight violin with no structural integrity is not as good as a slightly heavier one where everything has been fixed. So, I mean, as long as you don't overdo it, I don't see why it shouldn't work. It's an interesting one. Yeah, interesting. And, you know, certainly wolf notes are often dealt with by, you know, adding little point sort of weights and things. As I've always said, I think if the box of your fiddle is too homogeneous, it risks being able to reproduce one particular sound incredibly well. So I personally like to, you know, I welcome a bit of variety of thickness, a bit of unevenness and so on, because I think it makes it less likely that it will be able to really produce any one frequency very well, if that makes sense. So you're sort of reining it in a little bit, which allows it to produce a more even kind of sound. Having said that, because I tend to go with a flat arching or lower arching, because the way I set these things up, my violins tend to be quite loud. So who knows, maybe what I'm saying isn't right. That's the way I kind of think of it anyway. So much of this is conjecture and opinion, it really is. And I, you know, this chap with his violin, repairing it with veneer, a lot of people will be horrified by that. I say go for it, and you know, you can't beat trying it to actually sort of learn stuff. So no, that's really interesting. Let us know how it goes. Let us know how it goes. Be interested to see or hear it. DIY Dark Matter. I have a question. A couple of videos back, I think it may have got lost. Yes, I did manage to lose a whole load of questions. Sorry, that was me in my infinite wisdom. Managed to delete a video off my channel. Don't ask. Long story. Have you ever thought about laser cutting the ribs for inlay using two different woods like maple and dark walnut or ebony? Basically cutting the same pattern in both woods and then mismatching them, so you would have a light wood for the edge and dark wood for the inlay. Now I know this would make the ribs thicker, so you would have to plane them down. I don't think I can explain what I'm thinking, but I'll try. I'm thinking the dark wood would be inside and the light wood would be over the dark, so it would look like the light wood is on the outside of the inlay, but really it would be the dark wood that would be the stable part of the ribs. Okay. Yeah, so basically, I get it. So you're talking about sort of effectively piercing a lighter layer and looking through to the dark one. The light wood would be more of an overlay, yeah, like a reverse inlay. Do you think that's something you would try if you had a laser cutter? Regarding sound posts, oh, we'll get to the sound post. Oh, that's another question. Right, okay, laser cutter. I do have a laser cutter. It's not a very expensive one. It's not a very big one. It's hanging up on the wall at the moment. So this is it here. I think it was, what's it called? An Violinmaker or something like that. And it was half the size, and I bought longer rails and extended it. And it's great for some things. If you want to cut anything with it, it's more of a engraver really. If you want to cut anything with it, you have to do multiple passes. But I use it for, as you can probably guess from this, for making templates. You know, body templates, because I tend to design on Draft Site, which is an AutoCAD equivalent, cheaper, and then cut the templates on that. I'm just in the process of designing a viola at the moment. We'll talk about that in a bit. But generally, I've always thought, I mean, it's all right to use whatever machinery, whatever device you want to make a violin. Just be honest about what you've done. And if, like me, you're going to say something is handmade, then it has to be, I believe, made in a way where, you know, your skill and you actually sort of guiding the tools is what creates the work. So, I mean, although I think it's fine to actually sort of produce a template, I got one handy. Bear with me a second, I'll go and grab one. Just over here. Yeah, so I mean, after I've designed sort of a violin or whatever on the computer, I'll use that laser cutter to, you know, cut some thick card templates. You want to see my Shreddies template before now, I'm sure. I mean, that's where am I? This is another one, a mold template, you know. So the big 7 was because it was the 7th iteration of this particular design. So whilst what was I trying to say? I was trying to say basically I like using the laser engraver for things that that aren't directly in the finished instrument. However, DIY Dark Matter, engraving is something I've also thought about. I mean, you may or may not have seen the violin I made, which I I had a load of lettering around the outside, which I got a sign writer I know to do. In fact, I absolutely love that, and I have thought of doing some another few. And it is one of the things where I would consider sort of putting, using the laser engraver to do pretty much what you've described. But I think I would be very clear about, telling people that it wasn't handwork, so to speak. But having said that, it would mean that A, I could do things which were so intricate that I couldn't do them without doing it that way, and B, it means I could do them at a price where it was feasible, where it wouldn't otherwise be a possibility. So yeah, not against it. It's one of these things, watch this space. Who knows? It also depends, this isn't an entertainment channel as such, it's just your flies on the wall watching what Graham Vincent does in his workshop, and just me wittering away. So I mean, a lot of people ask me, why don't you make a violin in XYZ? But the thing is, I do, these are commercial propositions for me. I do need to actually sell them and make money. So I'm certainly, like I say, the sort of the violin with writing around the side, I love that, and that's sold. And I have been thinking about something with some more pattern on it. And this method, or something very similar to the method you're describing, is certainly something I'd consider, but I would most definitely have to sort of let people know that it was done by machine rather than by me. And I'd only do it if I thought I could sell it. Yes, so that's a horribly capitalist kind of commercial kind of answer, but I'm sure you understand where I'm coming from on that one. Right, Killer Sugar 6816. Regarding signposts, why do Baroque instruments have shorter soundposts? Are they off to the side more? Why would gut versus metal strings affect this? Have you tried other woods for soundposts or other diameters? Well, this is... Okay. I have a feeling you don't mean soundposts. I think you mean bass bars, and I'll explain why. Right. Well, luckily enough, I've got a template here. The bass bar is the piece of wood which is underneath, if this is the front on the outside, is underneath the bass side, and it goes from there down to about here. And in Baroque instruments, they were much smaller and thinner. The soundpost is on the other side of the bridge, and that goes from the front to the back of the instrument. And as far as I'm aware, I mean, you couldn't, I mean, a lot of instruments are converted Baroque instruments that were turned into sort of later specification classical instruments, if you like. And clearly you can't just make the soundpost shorter because it would just fall over. So although I think Baroque soundposts, from what we know, were often a thinner diameter, I don't think anything else changed there. But with the bass bar, which I believe is what the question is about, the bass bars, yes, were shorter. And generally, it's nowadays, I mean, the general consensus is that if the bass bar doesn't have quite a bit of stiffness and strength to it, it tends, the bass end of the instrument tends to get lost. It loses some power in the bottom end of the register. And I think that's simply because all the bass is allowed to dissipate around here. And clearly, although this may be the speaker cone that I was talking about earlier on for higher frequencies, it's a bit small for bass ones. The whole violin being a bit lighter is able to be pushed around by those bass notes. So for the lower notes, I don't think this wants to be acting as a speaker. It wants to be kind of pulling and pushing the whole instrument. So, I mean, with the different frequencies, there's a whole lot of different things going on. And that's why, if you look at a speaker on the shelf or whatever, oh, gosh, I can't bother pointing the camera up there, but, your stereo speaker on the shelf has a woofer and a tweeter. you can't do the whole range of frequencies well in one particular way. So I think it was about bass bars. I hope that's answered the question. It was about it's fashion about the sort of sound that people want to hear, really. If people didn't require such a deep bottom end to the instrument, then there was no impetus to have that more powerful bass bar. Who knows? And certainly, arguably, some Baroque violins do sound a little more delicate, if you like. Are they off to the side more? I don't know. I thought they were in the same position, but I might be wrong. Why would gut versus metal strings affect this? I don't think that's necessarily what caused the change, really, because let's consider when most of the violins were converted from Baroque style to classical style. That was, in the 19th century, and most people were still using gut strings. So that's not really an issue, and that's not really part of it, I don't think. Have you tried other woods for sound posts? Now, if you're asking about sound posts, yes, but the jury's out, really. If you're asking about bass bars, then I will always use the same timber that I've used for the front for the bass bar. So, for example, on this Spanish cedar violin, the bass bar is Spanish cedar. Yeah, hope that helps. I often say this, I'm not entirely sure that I've answered your question. There we go. Brennan985, probably a bit late, but, well, no, luckily for you, I've only late in the day on Friday had a thought to get on and do this video, so you're in here. Do you varnish that bit of the heel that hides above the top but under the fingerboard? Well, here's a bit of a secret, okay? And I'm the same as Stradivarius on this one, so here we go. Let me get one. This is a violin that's very nearly finished now. But that fingerboard isn't temporarily on there, that is permanently on there. That's fixed on once and it stays there. Which means it's very difficult to get at the front underneath that. So I, like Stradivarius and many others, just use a brush and try and put a bit of whatever finish we're using underneath that as well. And at the same time, I tackle that bit of end grain, which is what the question was about in there. Just try and get a bit of finish on that using a brush, really. There's a second part of this question, which is quite an interesting one, actually. Not saying the other one wasn't interesting, gosh. Do violin makers ever flip one half of the back so that the figure runs in the same diagonal direction rather than having an apex? So there's your piece of wood, book match. But what you're saying is flip one side over. So if on the back, if the grain, if the sort of figure was like that, if you flipped one half, let's get this right, yeah, then the grain would be running that way on one and that way. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that. People are kind of used to seeing grain or figuring running across because, of course, a lot of people use one-piece backs. I mean, I much prefer to make backs out of one piece. For example, there's not much figure to talk about in this one, but for example, that's a one-piece back. And unusually, that's a one-piece front as well. What would be the ramifications of that to wood movement and grain behaviour, cupping and such? I've said this before. I think because you're talking about a front and a back that, you know, at thickest might have a little piece at about 4 mil, but the rest of it is much thinner, and are part of a nice constraining system. I think the violin is able to cope with quite a lot of movement that thicker pieces of wood couldn't do without causing problems. You know, for example, we've got, you know, end grain glued down onto side grain, which should promote more cracking than you'd expect. You know, if you put a piece of furniture together like that with, you know, 22 mil, 7/8 solid pieces of wood, with end grain glued down to side grain, then you get massive cracks in the whole thing. But because these are thin pieces of wood, they're able to stretch and be compressed in ways that you wouldn't expect a thicker piece to sort of withstand. So I think the only place where you really have to consider that sort of thing is grain direction in the neck, I think, because obviously that's a larger section. Again, a lot of people are going to be up in arms about some of these things that I say, but all I say is consider the fact, you know, you've got blocks with the grain running vertically glued against, you know, grain running that way. There's all sorts of mismatching of grain directions in a violin construction, which we can only get away with because they're such thin sections. So I don't think it would be a problem. My personal feeling is it wouldn't look very nice, and that, I think, is the reason you don't see it. It would look a bit odd. It'd look a bit odd because those lovely symmetrical sort of figures on the back in book match backs just look so nice. So moving away from those, I can't see why anyone would choose to do so, really. But if you want to do so, do it. There's absolutely nothing against that. It's all subjective, isn't it? So what else am I up to then? I seem to have spent ages working on a pair of wonderful chestnut violins, and they're finally almost done. I had several problems with them, the neck being the biggest, because I made a sort of a neck for each one, fitted it, and then just kind of thought it's just not going to be strong enough, so I had to sort of you know, 1 step forward, 3 steps back, and sort of redo that and what have you. Plus there's been a couple of other things going on in my life and what have you, so been busy. I had to record a radio program. I will supply the link to that before it goes out, but it's because I'm a musician. This folk radio station's asked me to do it was a 1 hour sort of special with just me talking about some of the music I listen to and explaining why I like it and so on. So that was fun, but it took more than a day, which I hadn't expected. Do you know what? Radio is the amount of work that goes into a 1 hour show was surprising. It's not like turn on the phone and witter. It was much more involved. I've also, apart from that, I have never built a viola, but I am looking forward to doing so because I've got 2 orders for violas in. So I've got 2 violas to do, and then after that I've just got an order for a new ash violin as well. So that'll keep me busy for a couple of months. And obviously I will keep you all updated with progress with those. I think I'm actually going to draw up a full set of viola plans, or maybe more than one actually, which I will publish in the same way that I do with the violin plans, because sod's law, one of the violas has been ordered at 15 inches, so quite a small petite one, and then the other one has been ordered at 16.5, so a real monster. So I've been learning, I've been doing so much research over the last couple of weeks about what actually, I mean, because it's tempting just to get a violin and go, that's a viola, but it's not. So I've been learning I've been really looking into all the things that make a viola different, and they are, you know, the ratio of sort of neck stop to body stop and so on is quite different. Even the different sizes of viola can have surprisingly similar string lengths if you choose to do so. And because of the way some of them are set up, some of the smaller sizes of viola have a longer string length and therefore a better sound from the string than some of the bigger ones where the bridge is higher up on the body, where they're using a smaller string length, so they get a kind of a better sound from the body but a weaker sound from the string. So I'm obviously working quite hard to make sure that I get the best sound out of both of them. There's you know, the depth of the ribs is it's not just scaled up a bit, it's significantly deeper. And also I think I will probably, although you see many violas with a sort of quite a, not higher arching, but with the arching taken closer to the outside of the instrument. So I've got to decide what I'm going to do with that, whether I'm going to sort of move away from my normal approach to having that flat zone there. I think I'm going to maintain my kind of arching and maybe get some extra volume by having, you know, right on the wide end of ribs. But we'll see. You'll know the design choices I made when I get these plans finished. They're about halfway through at the moment. What else? Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing those. One of them is going to be in ash. The other one is going to be in pearwood. So it should be a nice couple of instruments. And then just a very standard one of my ash violins. So that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to doing that. That's going to actually have a maple neck on it, a figured maple neck. What else has been happening in the world here? Let me think. Not much tidying up has been happening. I need to go and do that. I think I'll try and do at least one additional video next week, actually, sort of with something going on in the workshop rather than just Q&A. I am actually wondering whether to reduce the Q&A from a weekly thing to maybe once a month, and actually then put my time into doing something else for the weekly video, so to speak. But anyway, I'm sure if you have an opinion, you will let me know. Good. Okay, I think I'm about done. I'm gonna, in fact, should I play you a tune? Why not? I think I was just going to turn it off and play myself a tune, but I think I might as well play a tune whilst I'm at it. So what am I going to play? Yeah, a Cornish tune called The Awakening. Cheers, folks. Look after yourself. See you soon. Bye.